Well, let's now try and get another perspective on the entire story. It's great to have with us Daniel Boardman ranting for Canada. He's actually, been fairly expressive on this entire issue and the way it's actually gone down. Daniel, what's your take now? Visas are being suspended, diplomats are being reduced on both sides. It's clearly a massive mess, and it looks as if it's going to get worse.
Yeah, that's a pretty good synopsis. This is a massive mess, and it's going to get worse. Listen, in my personal view, as someone who's followed the politics of both countries, Canada, of course, a lot closer than India, but I've been following Indian politics since the Article 370 stuff. So I wasn't completely new to both sides of the story, which is when I saw what Trudeau did in the context of Canadian politics. It's like, this is going to go bad. This is going to go bad for us. This was not a good idea. The visas is a massive shot from the Indian government. We're all trying to divinate why Trudeau might have done this. There's now reports that the Globe and Mail might have seen this report, and they might have released an article today that had some of the India connection. So Trudeau might have tried to preempt that. It's very amateur hour from the Liberal government. We like having our heads firmly in the sand on all important matters. Head, dig shovel, dig hole, head in sand. That is our default. And when the head comes out of the sand and it's not good, it's not a silly Canada voted the number place to live. Yeah. So
therefore, this is something which now politically could start having an impact with Trudeau, right? Because Canadians will say, oh my God, what on earth has happened? Why we had war with India? Well, not exactly war, but sort of. But and the second thing is, there's a very large Indian diaspora. Now, Trudeau and others have obviously been soft on certain elements of the Sikh community, the radical elements, but the vast majority of Sikhs are not radical, and the vast number of people of Indian origin are certainly not radical. They like their visas, they like coming and going from India, they have very close connections out there. And the minute all of that is going to be put on a little bit of a question mark, what's going to happen to those PIO cards and what's going to happen to those ACI cards, a lot of that political support that Trudeau might have been trying to get suddenly disappears.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It's going to happen that. I've been at conservative meetings with, half the room in turbans, right? And they're not Khalistani. You can get the Sikh vote without going to the Khalistanis. That's not what this is about. And Canadians, it's not we do want to ignore bad problems, but we also do want to highlight the good. There's a lot of what Canadians would know about Sikhs is probably a very proud, let's say, militaristic history, especially within the British Empire, right? So it's not Canadians don't want this. Canadians want to get along with India. They want to get along with Hindus. They want to get along with Sikhs. But this impulse to always want to get along and see the best, it's manifested in a way that we ignore these problems. That when there's Khalistanis openly threatening Hindus, it's very hard for Canadians to sort of take a side there. They don't want to get called racist, so they just kind of opt out. They go, okay, yeah, this is too hard for me. I don't know who to back. If it's a white person yelling about Hindus have to leave Canada and he's going to kill them and yada, 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 has an AK-47, he's in jail within 15 minutes and for the rest of his life. Khalistani leaders do this, and they're allowed to run amok and get positions of leadership within whatever NGO and temple group that they're a part of.
And the head in the sand part that you were referring to would also come up from the fact that actually, if you are to ever visit India and go to the Punjab, there's no support at all for Khalistan. The Sikhs in India don't want Khalistan. They're the only political party which may have somewhat of a pro-Khalistani position in Punjab. And I'm not talking about the rest of India, but 2.4% of the vote in Punjab. So it's clearly got no support out there. Khalistan and the support seems to be more of a Canadian phenomena than anything that's actually happening in India. Maybe that's something which is not fully understood.
You just have an absolute disaster of a situation here in Canada where we've sort of woken up. And we've sort of been hearing a little bit of Khalistani stuff recently. It sort of made it into the ether, and then it's sort of just blown up on our faces. And visas being canceled. So Canada's sort of in a panic right now, trying to figure out what's going on.
The specific allegation that has been made in this case that Indian agents came in. There's no evidence for this right now at all. But let's assume the worst. I was saying this a short while back. Let's assume the worst, and let's assume it's correct in every sense of the matter. There is a certain amount of double standard out here because the West has had absolutely no problems in going in and blowing up terrorists in, Iraq or Afghanistan or many other places. Oh, they are terrorists, they're bad guys, we're going to send in a drone and we're going to blow them up without judicial process, without anything else happening. And those were citizens of Iraq or Afghanistan, as the case might be. So there is a certain question which has to be asked. I'm not saying that anybody would justify murder in any country, but there's obviously broader aspects of this that have to be looked at.
Now, there is a double standard. I don't think the double standard's on India here. I think it's on Canada. Like, there's a difference between taking out a terrorist somewhere in a country that's not part of the sort of G20 Western alliance, right? So when you do this in an allied country that's part of the Commonwealth, like you're kind of saying you would do this in the UK, you could do this in America. Like there's a thing where it's sort of like stepping up levels, and like, yeah, geopolitics, it's not fair.
Blowing up, it's fine. It's fine if you're going in and shooting terrorists in Iraq or Afghanistan or one of those places. Just don't do it in a G7, G20 sort of a situation.
Yeah, I mean, like that's sort of like, that's got to be a Canadian thing. Like the Canadians have to be like, internal sovereignty, you can't do this here. Now the internal question in Canada is, how the heck did this guy even get citizenship? And then this becomes like another broader question that the world is asking. So from an American point of view, if you're going to look at this from the outset and be like, okay, this guy Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed in Canada. And, you know, he was this done by India? Was it not? You look at this, you know, this guy, he tried to get in 1997 on a fake visa, right? He tried to get in on a phony marriage. That got shut down. He's on an Interpol list. The Indian government calls him a terrorist. He's on video. He's on video with, you know, the guy who's now going, Hindus go back to India. We're going to get you. So at his funeral, Khalistani flags everywhere. This guy's clearly a Khalistani leader with some shady ties. This is not an 11-year-old girl I've invented called Priya, who was in a lovely little Khalistan dress, free Khalistan, twirling around in the air, and she went viral. And then all of a sudden that girl ends up shot dead. And is the Indian government involved in that? Like, that's an international scandal, potentially. This is like other countries, you're right. They're going to look at this and go, I'm going to get in a diplomatic war over this guy? AK-47, kill. Like, yeah, this is why.
And the immigration minister doesn't even know when he actually became a Canadian citizen. It was in 2015, 2007. Why did he become a Canadian citizen? You're right. That's another open-ended question, which I don't think anybody knows the answers to. All right, Dan, great talking to you. I'm going to allow you to get some rest now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome.
And that's it this week on This World. We'll be back again next week, coming to you from Washington, D.C., trying to analyze India's relations with the West, and how potentially all of them could be affected by the developments that we have seen this week. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.